Namaskar. I welcome you all in this today's Shobhana Gokhale Memorial Lecture Series being organized by Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies. Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies is a public charitable trust established by the researchers and students of Sanskrit and Indology in 2010. Professor Shrikant Bahulkar, a well-known authority in the field of Vedic studies and Buddhist Tantrism, was instrumental in forming this institute. Since its inception, Samvidya Institute has engaged itself in number of activities such as publication of books, arranging lectures, seminars, and workshops. Two annual lecture series have been started by the institute. One of the series is Dr. Shobhana Gokhale Memorial Lectures, for which we have gathered here today. Although many of us know the contribution of Dr. Gokhale very well, I take this opportunity to introduce her once again in front of this August gathering. She was born in Bapat family on 26th February 1928 in Amravati, Maharashtra. She was fortunate to have Professor P.V. Bapat, her uncle, and Professor V.V. Mirashi as her teacher. After her marriage with Mr. Lakshman Gokhale, she came to Pune and joined the Deccan College. She completed her PhD under the guidance of Professor H.D. Sankalia, the father of Indian archaeology. Her work in the field of Indian epigraphy and numismatics, especially on the Satavahana dynasty, brought her fame and won many laurels. She also worked on the inscriptions and coins of Kshatrapas, Traikutakas, Abhiras, and also the dynasty of Rashtrakuta. Even after her retirement from the Deccan College, she continued her research extensively. She was doing her research literally up to her last breath. She passed away on 22nd June 2013. Her long-awaited project on Junnar inscriptions has also been published by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, Pune, a few years ago. Samvidya Institute has conferred the honorary fellowship before her sad demise on her. With the strong support from her family members, especially her daughter Dr. Anjali Fadke, Samvidya Institute started the lecture series in her name. Dr. Vasundhara Filioza, Professor Srinivas Ritti, Professor Y. Subbarayalu, Professor K.K. Thapliyal, Dr. Devendra Handa, Dr. Gautam Sen Gupta, Dr. Shailendra Bhandare, Dr. Pankaj Tandon, and Shri Sanjeev Kumarji were our esteemed speakers who have delivered the lectures in this particular series till date. Owing to some inevitable circumstances, the lecture in this series could not be organized in the year 2024. However, when we requested Dr. Kumud Kanitkar, she readily agreed to deliver the lecture for the year 2024. The lectures in the series till date were funded by Dr. Anjali Fadke. Now, the Samvidya Institute has decided to continue the lecture series on its own without accepting any funding specifically for this purpose. However, we are glad to mention that we are receiving constant support from Dr. Anjali Fadke for our activities in general. We are grateful to her for providing encouragement in our academic endeavors. This year, we are fortunate to have Dr. Kumud Kanitkar as a speaker for delivering this lecture. I request Dr. Manjiri Bhalera to introduce our esteemed speaker. Thank you.
Hello everyone. On behalf of Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies, I welcome you all for the 9th Dr. Shobhana Gokhale Memorial Lecture. Today's lecture will be delivered by Dr. Kumud Kanitkar. It's my proud privilege to introduce her to all of you. Here is her brief introduction. Dr. Kanitkar completed her BSc from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai in 1964. Then she went to the US to complete her master's and PhD from University of Massachusetts, Amherst. She did that in 1970. She also did her postdoctorate at the University of Chicago, Illinois in 1971. In the US, she worked as a teaching assistant at the University of Massachusetts in the Department of Chemistry. When she came back to India, she taught for 18 years in chemistry departments of 3 different universities. She also has got industrial work experience where she worked in the Hindustan Organic Chemicals in the Department of Research and Development and Pollution Control. Then, after retirement, she turned her focus in the research of Indology. Her research in the fields of Indology and allied subjects resulted in the publication of numerous articles and 4 books. Her book on Ambarnath Shivalaya was awarded Ihio Hirayama Prize in 2013 by Institut de France, Paris. Her book entitled Bhuleshwar Shivalaya, which is a bilingual book published in both English as well as Marathi in 2020, was awarded a special prize in 2022 by the Maharashtra Granthotejak Samstha, Pune. She has also received honorary fellowship of Asiatic Society of Mumbai in 2024. She has delivered numerous keynote addresses and lectures in various universities and academic institutions. Along with this, she also has an interest in the philately. She has received a large silver medal with jury felicitation at National Level Philatelic Expo in Nasik in 2001. These are her publications, which you can see over here. I'm really happy to welcome Dr. Kumud Kanitkar to deliver her lecture entitled Inscriptions So Much More Than Words, Lending Permanence to the Ephemeral. Over to Dr. Kumud Kanitkar. Thank you.
नमस्कार. आज आपण डॉक्टर शोभना गोखले यांच्या स्मृतीप्रित्यर्थ व्याख्यान आयोजित केलेलं आहे. It is an honor for me to be here to commemorate Dr. Gokhale's work. The title is Inscriptions, So Much More Than Words, and a subtitle is Lending Permanence to the Ephemeral. Now, inscriptions are made for different reasons, different places, in different media. They distill the human essence beyond words. They include emotions, devotion, perseverance, the travel, and the need to travel for looking for the true faith. And they also reflect cultural traits. And we are going to look at some of the Chinese pilgrims, their travelogues also, Al-Biruni also. And then I'm going to include inscriptions which are from different media, different material, different languages and scripts, and they are located in different areas, different regions. So to make the inscriptions come alive and to provide a better perspective, I have included contemporary coins, travelogues of travelogues of visitors from abroad whose visits are contemporary with the inscriptions. And they also included archaeological structures. They help us bring the inscription alive in the sense the contents of the inscription, the form of the coins, how they change. that reflects the social, political, and economic environment of their times. They preserve also and convey the human feelings. And they're fashioned in response to some experience, whether it is in the art or the monument or the movement, and it is with the urge to preserve it. I've included these thumbnails to give you an idea of what to expect. This is the Takshila gold plate inscription. This is the inscription on the Adors pillars, which was from 1st century, and it was from Mathura. It is right now in the British Museum. This is a small sculpture on the Vaikuntha Perumal temple, which has captured Yuan Sang, that is Yuan Chuang. I have also included in Al-Biruni's, in the context of Al-Biruni's travels, a coin of Mahmud of Ghazni, which is bilingual, but the important thing is on one side, it bears the Shahada in Sanskrit, written in Sharda lipi. I've also included the actual sites, include the stupa at Kolua, which is Vaishali, part of Vaishali, Bodh Gaya, visited by the pilgrims, the Chinese pilgrims. This vihara I have included because it is in Sirpur, and there are a horde of bronze statues, bronze imagery found here, and also the Lakshman temple at Sirpur. So we'll start with the gold plate inscription. Here, the meaning is conveyed both through the words and image. And whereas Ashoka's edicts were inscriptions meant to be read by everyone, this gold plate, judging from its location and the lack of details contained in it, was not meant to be read by anyone other than the Lord. It was a communication between the person, that is Sira, the devotee who has made this in wishing for her parents' future life in their next birth, and the communication between Sira and the Lord. It was meant to convey to the Tathagata her fervent hope for the future life of her parents, and to gratify the wish to be near his great presence. Now, this is the location. This was found in Sirkap, which is near Takshashila, in Takshashila. And that Takshashila is relatively, to show you the relative position, this is the Sirkap and this is Peshawar. And this is, I'm trying to make it disappear. Okay. This was found in 1860 by Cunningham in the ancient city of Sirkap. And it's a beautifully turned, polished circular sandstone box. And inside was a small crystal hausa, which was small, 4 inches long and 1.5 or less than 1.5 inches high. It had a thin gold strip, very thin gold strip, but on that was inscribed the message that Sira wanted to give to the Tathagata. And I will not dare to read it. It's in Prakrit, written in Kharosthi script. And it says, it's the gift of Sira depositing a relic of the Lord in the house of her mother and the house of her father. And might it become, what it really means is that when they are reborn, they should be born as bodhisattvas or Buddhas. And it is to be conveyed to the Lord. And it is Therefore, this was engraved and placed next to the Lord's relics. Along with the message, there were Lord's relics also, and they were buried deep inside the stupa. And here Hansa is used to sort of visualize the concept of Hamsa, where the Hamsa is not only a bird. It is an alternate name for the Brahman or Atman, that is the supreme soul, individual soul. And even in present times, it is used as an honorific for a spiritual preceptor. For example, we say Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. That Hamsa refers to his stature. And this is an idea that is accepted for generations. And they continue because they are an emotional connect to the past. They are never discarded, but assimilated into the new setting. For example, the tree spirits, which was the idea prevalent before Buddhism, but it had no Buddhist connection. But it is still seen in Bharat. In a subsidiary position, they are not carved for worship, but as protectors of the stupa. Similarly, we find the concept of Hansa used here. And this is one of the, I mentioned already, that it was one of the type of inscriptions, donative inscriptions, were never intended to be seen. And they were not meant for public intimation, but they were buried deep inside the stupa. So then why were they written at all? Two reasons. First was the location near the relic reflects the concept of the sanctity of the proximity to Buddha. The historical Buddha remained a living unseen presence in the midst of early Buddhist communities. They believed that it was, his relic was actually, he was living there. And they had great sanctity. It was more than a symbol of the Buddha. It was the Buddha himself. And to be forever in the presence of the Buddha was considered a great privilege. And it is obvious in the large number of smaller stupas, even today, that we find in the ancient monasteries and stupas, that the stupa of Buddha is surrounded by a lot of secondary stupas. It is similar to the medieval West concept of burial ad santos, that means burial near the grave of a saint. Now, the second reason why the name was written was to identify the donor. Since Buddha was represented by his relics, the donor was represented by the name. And this need to identify the donor is perhaps linked to the time lag between the meritorious act and its expected result. See, in Vedic times, a yajna provided instant communication with the powers that be. So the prayer and the offering reach gods through Agni at the same time. Even today in Hindu rituals, the Yajamana states his name and Gotra at the beginning, so that the merit may go to him and his Gotra. I'm not being flippant when I say I have put it as KYC, because that is the intention, that the credit or the punya should go to him. And of course, in a bigger sense, in those days, it was also to his Gotra, to identify him. Because we don't have instead of just a first name and the Gotra was somewhat like the family name. And this was instant transfer in the Vedic period. But the stupas, by contrast, were built to acquire merit at some future unknown date. And this ardent wish of Sira is expressed, and it is written, and it is to be conveyed to the Lord for the benefit of the souls of our parents in their next birth. They have left the earth, but they will be born in their next birth. This is what she is hoping for. So therefore, proximity to the Lord was essential. Visibility was irrelevant. Therefore, it didn't matter if they're buried deep inside, as long as they were in that hamsa, there was the strip as well as the relic. And since the Lord is represented by the relics and Sira is represented by her name, the parents are no more. So the prayer is for them to be born in the next birth as the receptacle for Buddha. And perhaps that is why both are represented by a single hamsa. For who would know their names in the next birth? Hence a symbol for the departed souls, the crystal hamsa. The next one inscription is on a red sandstone pillar, capital of the Kushana dynasty. This is 1st century AD, found in Mathura. It's a unique historical document. You can see that it is Prakrit, written in the Kharoshti script. And among the inscriptions is one which records that Queen Nadasikasa, wife of the local ruler Satrap Rajula, had donated a stupa containing the relics of the Buddha. And it's a unique historical document because amongst the Prakrit inscriptions, the one which records the gift of the queen of a local satrap Rajula, some of her relatives are also mentioned. So this inscription clearly shows two things: that because she was the wife of the satrap, that means political leaders were involved in the patronage of religious structures. And the genealogy of the satraps of Mathura is mentioned, which this information is not available from any other source. Therefore, it makes the object uniquely important historical document. Endorsed lions back to back, they were known from the Mauryan period, and the details are given. And it is right now, it was gifted by Bhagwan Lalendraji to the British, who have displayed it in the British Museum. Now, this is a copper plate of Shilaharas of South Konkan in Kanakaditya temple. It was in the possession of the temple trust, and it is a solid 3 plates are there, copper plates, and they are all sealed with a Garuda seal, and they are quite a contrast to the next inscription I'm going to show you, also of Shilaharas, but of North Konkan, Ambernath. You see, the inscription, there are 2 components. One is the composer and the other one is the one engraver. So what the composer writes reflects the contents, but the state in which, or the handwriting or the presentation, reflects the skill or the lack of it of the one who inscribes it. So this is the Ambernath inscription. The main thing is it is important because it has a date. You can see it says Shaka Samvata 982 Shravana Shuddha Shukre, sorry. And it goes on to say, and it also mentions Amranatha Devak. I mean, the further words are not as clear, but it refers to the Amranath Devakulam. And this is important because although we say that except for the inscription, no other written record about the temple exists, but this is an unwritten record that has existed in the collective memory from the time, probably 11th century, when the temple was completed. Then we go to the accounts of the 3 Chinese pilgrims, and I must acknowledge the important recently published 2-volume book, Periplus of Hindustan. Periplus means Pradakshina. And so it is of Hindustan. That means she has included in 2 parts the different people from outside India who visited, and they have very clearly and concisely written down their experiences and their observations and what they took from here when they went back. And there were there were many exchange of goods and ideas in the first millennium because there was trade. Traders went back and forth. So along with the traders on their voyages, they also accommodated sometimes students. So there were Chinese students who studied at Indian universities, and learned Indian acharyas were invited to the courts of the Chinese nobles. So it was a give and take. The travel was difficult, but Shramanas as well as Brahmanas accompanied the traders to the far shores. Knowledge was delivered through lectures, debates, but not through written texts, thus leading to many distortions. And 3 notable Chinese pilgrims, each at a different time, set on the pilgrimage to the land of the Buddha to understand the true tenets of the Dharma, because through oral debates over the decades and centuries, the main tenets perhaps were lost. They were shrouded in other extra added material. But the importance to us, in addition to their purpose, was served because they carried all these, they copied and carried a lot of books, but their minute observations, they duly noted and preserved, are a treasure trove of lost Indian history because they support the contents of the contemporary Indian inscriptions. And their accounts have reflected the changing status of Buddhism, and some of the things that peep through are the cultural differences between Indian and Chinese way of thinking. So in a way, these inscriptions are freeze frames. Like Fahian was there, end of 4th century, early 5th century. Yuan Chuang, sorry, whom when I was in school, he used to be called Yuan Atsan. But now the correct pronunciation is how it is written, Yuan Chuang. He was in the early first half of the 7th century, and Yi Jing was a few years after Yuan Chuang. And their writings shed light on the changing status of Buddhism vis-a-vis Hinduism at important pilgrimage centers in the north. Remember, all 3, the majority of the time was spent in the north. And for Yuan Chuang, just because of the chance he wanted to take for a sea voyage, which didn't happen. But because of that, he went to Amravati, Nagarjunkonda, and eventually Kanchi, from where he returned. So therefore, they're mostly from North India. And decline of Buddhism is evident from the sad state of stupas and the viharas. And the cultural difference that peep through their writings, I give one example. At Kushinagar, Ashoka had erected a pillar to commemorate the Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha. But Yuan Chuang notes that the date and the day of the event is not mentioned. To him, it is a big surprise that Samrat Ashok would erect a monument without this important detail. And some other things that come through is that at Sarnath, the stupa was in ruins, though the 70-foot tall Ashokan pillar was still standing. And mind you, this is about the time Buddha was 400, 500 BC. And that means nearly 800-900 years have passed. So the Ashokan pillar was still standing, but the stupas were already in ruins. And Prasennaji was the king in Buddha's time, and Jeta was his son, who is famous for the Jetavana. I mean, we know him because of the Jetavana incident. This is how Fahian arrived. He arrived on foot, but left by sea. So he's starting from China. He's traveling through the Taklamakan Desert, through the Gobi Desert, and then then he turns around a U-turn and he finally comes into India. and then goes on to Mathura, Sankisha, Kapilavastu, Shravasti, and so on and so forth. And then finally he undertakes a sea voyage to return from the port of Tamralipti, which would go to Sri Lanka, and then from Sri Lanka they would set sail for the Malayan or Indonesian archipelago. Fahian was the first one we are discussing. See, Buddhism had reached China in the first century itself, and two bhikshus had reached China because the Han Dynasty emperor had invited them. And his story is a bit, I should tell you, he entered the monastery at the age of 3. Obviously, because it was not his decision, but his parents had lost the children born before him. So they had said, they had promised that if a child is born, a male child is born, they would give him to the monastery. So first they were reluctant, but then when he fell ill, they realized that maybe they were being punished. So he hurriedly, they took him to the monastery when he was 3. And at the age of 20, he had finished his education and he had become a bhikshu. But the monastery had only 2 written books. So, and even there, the written books, the contents didn't match. So Fahian decided to travel to India in search of the true knowledge. And his guru, Indian Acharya Kumarajiva, he advised him to also visit the tirthas. And this is important. It was the instruction to look around and learn the social, cultural aspects of the local people he met. Because that would help him understand Buddhism also better. And so he set on foot. First, I had mentioned already, Gobi Desert, Taklamakan took him 17 days to cross. And the travel was difficult because through the deserts, there are no maps and the terrain doesn't remain fixed. It changes with the winds, but it was difficult, and perseverance is the essence of all 3 travelers from China that we are discussing. So he finally reached, and he stayed when he reached Khotan, he stayed there, and he was impressed by the discipline there among the bhikshus and the administration and the general prosperity. Because after Buddha's parinirvana, a lot of traders and merchants had donated income from the villages to the monasteries. And these donative inscriptions, that is something phenomenal, that these donative inscriptions, carved on metal, of course, were still valid and yielded income to the monasteries. So these are donations given 5th century, 4th century BC, and they were still valid in 4th century CE. So when Fahian lived in India, this is to put it in context, political context, the Gupta dynasty was ruling. And he doesn't mention names of the kings, but it was probably matching the time era. It was Chandragupta Vikramaditya. Fahian visited Sankisha. He noted the broken Ashokan pillar. Here the pillar was broken too. And he went to Jetavana, where the Jetavana Vihar was still in use, but the Kapilavastu was in a sad state. And then he went to Vaishali. Now, this is a plaque which is displayed in the Mathura Museum. It was found at Rajghat in Mathura about 2nd century AD. So I feel that Fahian must have seen it in place where it was. So this is an early version. And some things to note is that the 8 important events, birth, first bath, etc. The first bath is given here. The depiction is that it was given by 2 Nagas, Nanda and Upananda. And so this was the descent from heaven. So it was considered an important event in his life. He had gone there to teach the Dharma, explain his Dharma to his mother, who had died when he was just a few days old. So Fahian's main goal was to acquire the written Dharma Granthas. Majority of the monasteries still followed the Maukik tradition. Imagine this was a few hundred years after the Tathagata, and still the Maukik tradition carried on. And it was not like the Vedic tradition. It was not fixed and very systematically made sure that phonetically it was not corrupted. But this was, everyone would give discourses, there would be discussions, debates, and it would modify, it would change. So he wanted to find the origin, the books where it was written. So he finally, in Patliputra, he found a Mahayana monastery which had a copy of the Vinaya Pitaka, and also equally amazingly, it had a copy of the declaration passed at the end of the Buddhist Council, which sort of regulated how the different factions or different sects should function together. And he spent many years in this matha, then learned Sanskrit, read the books, tried to understand them, and he copied all the three Pitakas and anything that available that was in the written form. Now imagine this perseverance. You just have to give them this credit. After leaving China, it took him 6 years to reach the Tirthas in North India. He's walked all the way. Then it took him 6 more years to visit various sources and copying books from there. Then he decided to take the sea route. So he came to Tamralipti, but here he found some more books. So he spent 2 more years there. He found a passage on a trading ship, which took 14 days to reach Sri Lanka, where he found more books. So he stayed 2 years copying the books. And these are the books that Chinese had not even heard of. He got them translated. He also found books written in Pali. And he boarded another trading ship. And after 90 days, reached Java. After that, another 3 months through the stormy seas, reached Canton. Then at Nanking, he submitted all the books to the Mata. But he did not write a detailed travelogue. But what he has written, collected, is enough to give us glean us what his life and his travel through India was. He spent the remaining years translating these books in Chinese, and though he could not complete all, he died at 88. Now, this is my attempt to bring the inscriptions, make them look alive, come alive. So when we're talking about Jetavana, this is how it is depicted. Now, they say that gold coins were used here in the story. I couldn't find gold coins to illustrate, but the Panchmak Karshapana of the Koshala Janapada, because when Prince Jeta was the son of King Pasenadi, that is Prasenajita, and these are the Panchmak coins, you notice that these Panchmarks and their order helps the numismatist identify that this is Prasenajita's coin. Then Fahian went to Vaishali also to visit Vaishali. It was one of the 16 Mahajanapadas during the time of Buddha's birth. And this is supposed to be Raja Vishal Ki Gadi Kagad. And it goes on to describe the physical, it was huge. He also went to Vaishali. And Kolua is part of Vaishali, ancient Vaishali, and you see this huge stup, which is been redone many times. The initial stup might have been small, but then subsequent dynasties have added, because it was a few hundred years after the Parinirvana. And this is the Ashokan pillar with the majestic lion guarding the stupa. Now I have tried. When I went to Kolua, Vaishali, I actually found these bhikshus from, obviously not from India, and they were chanting prayers. So I thought it is just gives, it brings it alive, so to speak. And this is the lion, magnificent lion. I mean, you can see how majestic it is. So these remains, Vaishali also had other important aspects that you should know, or perhaps you do know, that he spent many Vassavasa. That means during Vassavasa he would stay there, and finally he conceded and he allowed the nuns to the Sangha for the first time, and he announced his approaching nirvana. And then when he went to Kushinagar, this is from where he is supposed to have turned around himself once and then went on, prepared for his parinirvana. He also converted Amrapali from a proud courtesan to a nun. Now, recent excavations have revealed some other components also. And these are the newer components. This is the lion, this is this pillar, and this is the stupa that you see. And of course, if there were monasteries, there were viharas, they had to be sources of water. So these were the wells. Now we come to Yuan Chuang, and poor chap, he traveled only on foot. Not that he wanted to, but when he came on foot to leave, he wanted to go the same way that Fahian. But by the time he reached Kanchipuram, he met bhikshus who had come back from Sri Lanka, and they said there is a Rajaka. That means there is a great turmoil because the king has been killed, so better not to go. So Yuan Chuang walked all the way back and then again went to Nalanda and spent some more time before again walking all the way back. He spent 16 years in India, and that included Kabul to Kanchipuram because that was the extent of India there. He had 2 students with him who later wrote his detailed travelogue. And he has noted, important thing is he has noted the direction of travel between each segment and also the distance that they walk. This meticulous information is very useful for us for both history and geography. And he was born in a learned and scholarly family, very sharp intellect. At 12, he entered a monastery. And mind you, at 13, he delivered a lecture. And that attracted the attention of various acharyas, and he started to take part in many public discussions. Remember, this was still, this is how the tenets of the Dhamma were discussed, debated, and then accepted. So he would try to understand his opponent's point. He would verify the correctness of his concepts. He was quick-witted and could grasp new concepts very easily. He realized that since all the discussions were oral, main tenets of Buddhism were becoming distorted. So only solution was clear: to travel to India, learn with the scholars there, remove the false layers acquired by the original Dhamma. And also that would give him a chance to visit the tirthas associated with Buddha's life. So in 629, at the age of 28-29, he made the decision. Yet under the prevailing superstitions, mind you, he still waited for a good omen, which was in the form of a dream that he dreamt, and then he decided that this was the omen he had been waiting for. So he took a similar route to Fahian, but there was a big difference because the political picture had changed. Whereas Fahian had no problem traveling, political problem, but because of the worsened conditions in China, famine and chaotic political scene, epidemics, the new emperor had also banned travel to foreign countries. But Yuan Chuang was firm. He was not about to, discard his trip. So he had to travel like an outlaw. So he was tracked and by the king's men with warrants for his arrest. But many places he found sympathizer who helped him. And his fame was now traveling ahead of him. He was a child prodigy who is now an adult and is going in search of the truth. So the people who had heard him in debates and had accepted defeat at his hands carried tales of his sharp wit and analytical mind. So his fame had really spread, and it was traveling ahead of him. And so many people along the route offered him hospitality, arranged his discourses. He even administered Buddhist Diksha to someone who wanted it. And then they gave him letters of introduction to the local chiefs in the his next journey, kind of like a visa, you can say, in our times. And some insisted that he stay in their kingdom so that the travel time lengthened. And he made meticulous notes of the monasteries he visited, the number of bhikshus there, details of everything from food, customs, quality of cloth, minerals, crops, language, scripts. And Harshavardhan was the king when Yuan Chuang reached India. Now, Yuan Chuang did meet him, and Harshavardhan tried to persuade him to stay in his court, but he said no, he had to go back. So finally, he let him go. On his way to India and to Bodh Gaya and all these places, he stayed in Kashmir for 2 years. And this is just when he was coming towards Bodh Gaya and Nalanda. Ayodhya was a Buddhist center. It was along the way, but it was a Buddhist center there. He also mentions that Prayag had only 2 Buddhist monasteries, but hundreds of temples. When he went to Shravasti, nearly 1,000 years had elapsed after his parinirvana. And again, the same thing I have already mentioned. King Prasenajita ruled here. So only some fragments of the palace were left. Most Buddhist monasteries were in a dilapidated condition. This is a reflection on the state of Buddhism. In his time, which was like 7th century, first half of 7th century. And temples of the followers of other religions were there, but monasteries, Buddhist monasteries, were in a dilapidated condition, and the Jetavan Vihar was totally obliterated. Only a 70-foot tall pillar erected by Ashoka remained. And then from Kashmir, he traveled to Rajouri, where he met a scholar, Vinita Prabha. He stayed 14 months to study under him. See, he had come to gather knowledge. And any chance he found, he was like a bee, he gathered honey from every place he could. So he came to Jalandhar, met Bhikshu Chandra Varman, stayed 4 months, and then eventually reached Mathura. He traveled through Emperor Harshavardhan's territory, kingdom, but he didn't meet him yet. He was, after he returned from Kanchipuram, he met him. So, but he did notice that the bhikshus that studied there and Mathura had 20 large Sangharamas. And he reached Kanyakubja, that was the capital of Harshavardhan. And then he went to Sarnath. Here, Sarnath also, the stupa was in a dilapidated state. But the 70-foot stone pillar of Ashoka was still standing. At Bodh Gaya, he was overcome with emotions. I mean, all his troubles and the travails, he could feel that this is the moment for which he had come. He meditated there for some time, and then he proceeded to Nalanda. And here also his fame had traveled before him, so he was well received. And Nalanda then was in its heyday. So any one day, he has noted that there would be nearly 10,000 people there, comprising acharyas and students, and different streams of Buddhism. All of the 18 that were there then were taught. Also astronomy, maths, and many other sciences were taught. But here still education stressed discussions, deliberations, and debates. And this is connecting, bringing the inscription or the travelogue alive. He mentioned that the 70-foot stone pillar of Ashoka was still standing. But when this was in the 2000 something, when we visited, it was broken and in fragments, and it had a beautiful inscription. When you look at this and you think of Ambarnath, you can imagine how good the people who inscribed the Lipikaras were there. Three of them are in other edicts. One is second one is in Ashoka's edict. It's in Mauryan Brahmi and Kushana King. Ashokosha's is there. Third one is Gupta Brahmi. So this is the state. It tells us about the state. And Bodh Gaya and the Bodhi tree. And this is where Buddha himself meditated for a long time. And so you can see there are plenty of visitors who have come from afar to pay their homage. So after he completed his studies, he planned his return journey to China by sea via Sri Lanka from Tamralipti. So he was advised to go first rather than like Fahian board a sailboat at Tamralipti and travel to Sri Lanka. He was advised to go south first on foot, so that only a 3-day voyage would be required to take him to Lanka. So he proceeded, and on the way then he took the chance to visit Nagarjuna Konda and Amravati. At Amravati, he met other scholars of Mahasanghika sect, and their important texts he studied. He grasped the philosophy. Then he proceeded to Kanchipuram, which was the capital city of the Pallavas, which was a leading center of Buddhism then. However, unrest in Sri Lanka, I already alluded to it, caused him to decide against going there. So he returned to Nalanda. So he walked all the way back to Nalanda. He didn't straightway go back to China. And by this time, his fame was widespread. He was greatly respected. And how respected he was, even in non-Buddhist communities, is a reflection. This image is a reflection of his importance. He was memorized. I mean, he was considered so great that he was picturized here in Vaikuntha Perumal temple. So then he also, later on his way back, he met Harshavardhan, who was very impressed by him. He tried, and his knowledge, and he tried to convince him to stay in his kingdom. Finally, he persuaded the king to allow him to go. So he provided an elephant to carry the books back to China. And of course, what happened was the elephant got washed away while crossing another river, and the books were also lost. But he was not to be defeated. He spent more time there, got the titles which were lost. He copied them, and only then he proceeded. And his translations are very meticulously, they were done very meticulously. And after reaching China, this time he was welcomed by the emperor with both arms. So he left as a fugitive but returned as a hero. And he lived for 19 more years after his return. I couldn't resist the temptation of including my photo next to Yuan. So that is Yuan Chuan. And to give context, this is Harshavardhana's coin. And because Harshavardhan's elder brother was killed, so he did not want to call himself the king. So he used to call him Shiladitya of the Pushyabhuti dynasty. And this is his silver drachma. And this is the backside of it. And so this is what is there in the Vaikuntha Perumal temple at Kanchipuram. And this, when Nalanda Mahavihara was celebrating its so many years of existence, the Chinese government sent for the Mahavihara there was named after Yuan Chuan. So they sent what they thought he looked like when he traveled. And this is the statue that is erected there. Yijing was, he came both ways by sea. And so we haven't even, some of us have not even heard of his name. And of course, there were many others that we do not know of, but his work is very valuable for us because he wrote a very detailed account of the 10 years he spent at Nalanda. It's almost like a manual for pilgrims who followed him. And that is what he said, that anyone who reads my book will find it easy to come to Nalanda and stay there and study. He had entered the Buddhist monastery when he was 7, and he was 10 years old when Yuan Chuang returned to China. And you can imagine the whole of China was thrilled and awed by the feats of Yuan Chuang, physical as well as intellectual. And Yijing was no exception. He dreamt of visiting all the tirthas of Buddhism, getting authentic copies, uncorrupted tenets. He did not have the means, though, for the journey. So in the meantime, he studied whatever he had found. He found a Vinaya Pitaka copy, so he studied that for 5 years. Then he traveled to another monastery, had more written, that had more written discourses, and the discourses were noted, and then spent years studying them. So finally, when he was 36, he found a trader who could sponsor his voyage to India. And so he came from China. He stopped in Indonesia to study Sanskrit. And I was amazed. I was an ignoramus. I mean, I did not know that education in Nalanda was in Sanskrit. And to enter Nalanda, you had to give your test in proficiency in Sanskrit. And a so-called Dwara Pandit would be at the entrance gate to introduce an oral test of an aspiring entrant. So Yijing, we used to call him Yijing, finally reached Tamralipti via Sri Lanka and Burma. And there was a Varaha Avatara temple at Tamralipti where he stayed for 2 years. Not 2 years, but for a long time to learn more Sanskrit. And then after these tirthas of Jetavana, Rajgir, etc., he reached Nalanda. Now this is the Nalanda Mahavihara, one of the greatest universities. And according to ASI, this is what is written. I have written it out here. It was founded by Kumaragupta in the 4th century, 5th century. And amongst other patrons was King Harshavardhan of Kannauj. And so this is a huge complex and so many temples. And these are all the burial at Santos that you find everywhere. And you look at this, I mean, we looked at this and we didn't want to come back home. And his writing includes, like I said, 10 years he stayed and he wrote a lot of things. And there were 3,500 bhikshus who were studying at Nalanda then. And the revenue of 20 villages was allocated to Nalanda. He doesn't mention the donors, but there must have been many, even small kings donated. And there were so many large halls for discussions, and there were 300 rooms for the bhikshus to stay. And he collected 400 books. Then he decided to set for home. Then he came by a sea route again. So he went to reach Palembang. And there he did some more writing, his experiences. Now that he had some leisure, he wrote down his own travelogue sort of thing. And then he called his own book, The Record of the Sacred Law as Practiced in India and Malay Archipelago. This is the English translation, but this inequivalent in his Chinese he had written it. He sent home from the Southern Sea with the bhikshu who was returning to China because he's planned to stay some more time there. So he wanted this to reach his monastery first. And this book was like an encyclopedia and included so many things, including Ashtanga Ayurveda and medicinal plants and diagnostic tests, treatments. And even more phenomenal is that he collected and collated accounts of tours of 56 other Buddhist bhikshus until his time, which was after Yuan Chuang. So it was still 7th century. These Buddhist bhikshus from China, Central Asia, Korea, who visited India in the latter half of the 7th century. And the name of this book is Memoirs of Eminent Priests Who Visited India and Neighboring Countries in Search of Law under the Great Tang Dynasty. And this I found recently that it was translated by Latika Lahiri, published in 1986. So I come to Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni was in the next millennium, beginning of 11th century. And he was also another child prodigy. He was known for his scholarship and his knowledge, and he knew these sciences, maths and astronomy, medicine, history, geography, everything. And amongst the languages, he knew Turkish, Persian, Arabian, Sanskrit, Hebrew, and Armenian. He did not know Greek, but he studied Greek philosophy from the books translated into Arabic. And he was knowledgeable, and his sharp wit meant he was a walking encyclopedia. And the problem that sort of it stuck in his throat was that in 1017, Mahmud of Ghazni captured Khorasan. He was born and he lived in the province of Khorasan. It was captured by him. And Mahmud looted India the same way he looted the scholars of Khorasan, which was a very culturally rich center, and brought the scholars as prisoners of war. And Al-Biruni was one of them. So he came to India with Mahmud on one of his campaigns. That's why I say willy-nilly. I mean, he probably didn't want to travel with this guy, but he was getting an opportunity to travel to India. So, and he has traveled for 13 years, apparently. And he had studied in depth the works of Brahmagupta. He had studied a lot of Sanskrit. He knew about the Indian system of Kalaganana. He knew astronomy. He knew the Indian maths. And he studied variety of subjects with scholars in each field through debates. And he sought knowledge where he could. But he also shared his knowledge with other scholars. And he has quoted extensively in the book that he wrote, Tahqiq Hind. He has quoted extensively, he has quoted the Indian reference in Sanskrit language. He was not afraid of what the Pandits or not mullahs or whoever the priest would say. He went ahead and did this. So Al-Biruni has noted, and this is important, it is important for us to acknowledge, understand, and see to it that we do not do it. He says Hindu Pandits do not understand the importance of writing history. When asked about history, they recount myths, and he made notes of the society, keenly observed them. He completed his book in 1013. Even that book was in two parts. First was 468 pages when translated in English, and 444 in the second half. It introduced India and its knowledge systems to the people of Central Asia. He was not a Buddhist monk. He was just a scholar in search of knowledge. He wanted what knowledge he could gain. And therefore, this is the knowledge systems that he has gathered so that he could introduce them to the people of Central Asia. And Al-Biruni knew he did not like Mahmud of Ghazni. He knew his aim was looting, not establishing kingdoms. And he has also noted that Mahmud looted, he has lamented in a way. He has said that Mahmud looted all the wealth of India. Not only did he loot the wealth of temples, he totally destroyed the whole economy, and his action created tremendous hatred against this foreign religion. And he accepted seers. He appreciated the Vedas and the Brahman concepts of Brahman and Atman. Yet he was sharp enough and he was open enough to say that there are people who are Tattvajnas, who understand and who follow it. But there are others who are just Murti Puja. And he has commented that even people the Pandits who can recite Vedas, don't necessarily, all of them, not necessary that they understood. And another interesting thought, and this is my own two bits, what he has written. He thought that the root of making idols for worship, because he was a Muslim, so he did not believe in idol worship, but he says perhaps he's trying to look for the reason. He thought the root of making idols for worship was a way to keep alive the memories of the ancestors and providing solace to the grieving families. Each his own. And these are the coins of Mahmud of Ghazni. And this is actual a physical coin. These are I have taken from the mark volume, third side of the coin. And it has the Islamic declaration of faith, the Shahada. And this, there is no better thing in the next slide. This one side is bilingual, one side is Arabic, the other side is in Sanskrit and in Sharada Lipi. And it says Avyakta Ekam Muhammad. Avatar is the translation. Avatar Anurpati Muhammad. Actually, it is translated in English. It says, "I bear witness that there is no God but God." That is no God but Allah, and there is no worthy of worship but Allah. And Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So, and this is also interesting for numismatics. The border says, "Avyaktiya name ayam tankam ruto." Mahmudapura Samvati, unfortunately, after Samvati, this part is lost. But this is, perhaps it was his way of reaching out. And then we come to the Dakshin Koshala monuments, inscriptions, and coins, and temples, and viharas. So this is, previously we saw Prasenajit. He was in the time of Buddha, so it was just punchmark coin. But these are silver drachmas. These are 6th century, and therefore they are a little better. Now you can see the Prasenajit, Prasannamitra's coin, Sharabapurya of Koshala, again 6th century. He was a Vaishnava. You can see Garuda, you can see Shankha, you can see Chakra and his name. And it was a gold coin, but unifaced. Backside was just this counterpart of it. So why we don't realize the importance of Koshala is because we are only looking at Portuguese and Vasco da Gama and the western coast and the trade between Arabs and even Kutchis. But the ancient main route joining North India with southeast and sea coast pass through all these places, and Shardol, Bilaspur, Ranipur, Raipur are in the current state of Chhattisgarh. Now the towns of Bandhogad, Sirpur were located on this route, and these contacts grew up considerably because of this route trade. And when Somavanshis established their rule in the extensive area stretching there, because of the unitary rule, this area was knit together politically and culturally. I'm quoting K.D. Bajpai. So, ancient Koshala is the modern day Chhattisgarh, and it's sometimes it's our prejudices. It's marginalized. I mean, even today we think of Chhattisgarh, which is one of the fastest growing states in India. It's considered somewhat backward because there are tribals. But in fact, epigraphical evidence supported by the archaeological remains shows that turn of the 7th century, Dakshin Koshala was already a rich center of early Shaivism. And great collection of copper plate charters and stone inscriptions issued by kings of Dakshin Koshala from the end of 5th until the middle of 7th century. Most of these records are available and contain valuable information about the political and religious situations at the time of issue. And their common purpose is to record donations of land and money by a person in charge or his relatives to temples, temple gods, Brahmins, and other religious people and institutions. A Mahashiva Gupta Balarjuna, his mother Vasata, she was a princess of Magadha, married into this family, and she built the Lakshmana temple at Sirpur in memory of her husband. And we also find bronze hordes of bronze images, plus actually a workshop where you can see how it was worked. And these images were in viharas. That means viharas also promoted formation, the making of bronze images. So the Bastar tribal bronzes testify to the popularity of this form of art and the material. And this is the magnificent Lakshmana temple at Sirpur. And this is for scale, and it is in brick. And this is the inscription which says that she built it, the Queen Vasata built it. And you see exquisite sculptures, so beautiful. And this is something I found amusing, is that on the Bhadra, Ambernath and all, most of the temples, our stone temples, this usually reflects what is inside, the deity inside. So it will be a form of that deity. But here, architecturally, a Ghanadwar is literally a Ghanadwar. And the designs, of course. This is what I showed you in the previous slide. Now, this side inside also has beautiful designs, exquisite designs. And tin was one of the earliest metals known and used mainly in bronze images. And it has the correct properties. It alloys well with other metals. And this is important, that resources, this is, I'm quoting from Indian Minerals Yearbook of 2021, Metals and Alloys. It says resources are spread of tin are spread over in Bastar and Dantewada district of Chhattisgarh. So it's no wonder that many bronze images were found, and they were mineral. I mean, they were being worked there, and even the Bastar tribals have bronze images. So this interesting 2008 excavation by A.K. Sharma and his colleague found earthen ghariyas. I mean, actually, they found a place where these things were being done. And they found ghariyas, that is crucibles, and they found bricks which were used to keep the red hot crucibles after they were taken out of the furnace, and so many images. And the images, because this was Mahayana and Vajrayana together, had been the main religion at that time in Sirpur. And that this creed, the Bija Mantra, was probably used to install these images. And so the metal seals bear this mantra. They are sometimes found to the backside of the images, sometimes written on the pedestal. And these are the actual things. This is the large size brick, burnt, they were the cup marks, not cut marks, cup marks. And you can actually find that this had thick layers of soot and metal adhering to their insides, and not the best of art, but it was made Vajrayana Buddhist images. And this is the sea on the back of the image. And this is something we can learn from backward region, my foot. They have done something that we should have been doing it. We should do it in Ambernath also, or Kanari also. They put copies of inscriptions in places where people can read them easily and in the context. So this is in Rajiva Lochan temple at Raipur, Chhattisgarh, and it has the gist of the Jagapala Deva Karajim Abhilekh, and this is all written there, and it is put in on marble, and it is put there. Also, another dynasty, Nalavamshi, that also is there. So that is what should be done with inscriptions, not some tomes in some big libraries where you can only read them there. And this is artistic excellence, of course, in the design. This is also Rajiva Lochana temple in Raipur, near Raipur. And this is something I wanted to add, definitely, to end the lecture on a lighter note. Can you see? This is this is a Mithuna of a different type, I would say. This is a lady, this is a man. She is trying to strangle the man and holding on to him by his top knot. And he's trying to defend himself, I think. And this lady is obviously aghast at what is going on. Now, but the very next panel is the other way around. Now, this man is trying to strangle her. So I don't know what it represents. The only plaque or the plate that is there describing the sculptures says Stone Pattika, 8th and 9th century. But anyway, it's food for thought. And I end with the inscription at Bodleian Library when the Oriental Library section was open, the building was open. This is what it says: Shaleyam Prachashastranam. And I mean, it sounds nice. Albert Edward iti ख्यातो युवराजो महामनः Rajarajeshwari Putras Tat Pratishtham, so on and so forth. And it says that Ishanukampaya Nityam Arya Vidya Mahiyatam, and so on and so forth. So, thank you, and I hope you liked it.
Hello, Namaskar. As a trustee of Samvidya Institute of Cultural Studies, I am Dhanashri Shezwalkar, present in the vote of thanks. We have just heard the 9th Dr. Shobhana Gokhale Memorial Lecture for the year 2024. It was delivered magnificently by Dr. Kumud Kanitkar Madam, who is a senior Indologist and historian. Her topic was Inscriptions, so much more than words, lending permanence to the ephemeral. It was, as usual, a very insightful lecture, which provoked many thoughts in our minds, and it will be lingering in our minds for a while, so that many research avenues will be open by listening to this magnificent lecture. Thank you, ma'am. We are really grateful to you. Samvidya is also grateful to the family of Dr. Shobhana Gokhale Madam, especially her daughter Anjali Phadke Madam, who is always supporting us for this memorial lecture series. It's been 9th year of our association, and we really look forward to many more years of this association. Thank you, Anjali Phadke Madam. And last but not the least, all the listeners who are enthusiasts, who are researchers, who are scholars, and who are really interested in this topic and who have joined for this beautiful lecture by Kanitkar Madam. Thank you, one and all. Namaste.